So good morning, India. This is Amritanshu Bajpayee. I welcome you all to yet another episode of Astronomy Delights, episode 23 for the day. And I am very happy that today we are going to have the Silver Jubilee speaker of our episode, the 25th speaker on our platform, Dr. K. Channa Reddy. So I welcome you all on behalf of all the collaborating institutions who have collaborated together for the past 4 months, especially Sky Amateur Astronomers WIPNET Club, Ignited Minds WIPNET Club, Women-Led Science WIPNET Club, and these three WIPNET have been supported under the umbrella of Sky Foundation, the Bagalkot Astronomy Club, Akash Ganga Center for Astronomy, and yes, of course, our international partners, Univerge International. So I welcome you all on behalf of the entire fraternity of amateurs, the citizen scientists, and all the professionals who have gathered on the umbrella of Sky Foundation. Special welcome to all the guests who have joined together, the entire audience who have supported for us for the past 4 months. मैं अमृतांशु वाजपेयी आप सभी लोगों का हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं, स्वागत करता हूं अपने इस 23वें एपिसोड एस्ट्रोनॉमी डिलाइट की सीरीज के, जिसमें आज हमारे 25वें वक्ता, हमारे 25वें अतिथि वक्ता, सम्मानित अतिथि वक्ता हमारे इस प्रेजेंटेशन को ग्रेस करने जा रहे हैं, डॉक्टर के चन्ना रेड्डी फ्रॉम ओस्मानिया यूनिवर्सिटी। और इससे पहले हमारे अतिथि वक्ता अपने वक्तव्य को प्रारंभ करें, आई वुड जस्ट लाइक टू इनवाइट अप ऑन दिस डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म मिस अर्चिका डोगरा to kindly introduce the session for the day and welcome our guest of honor, and also tell us a bit about Univerge International before we bid farewell to this series of astronomy delights in the corona pandemic and continue up beyond the corona times. Over to you, Archika.
Hello, yes, thank you so much. I am currently in Seattle in the United States, so it is 10:30 p.m. here, and I'm so excited to be here for the final episode of the Astronomy Delight series. It's been very remarkable. I've been able to attend some of these series, speak at one myself, and our Univerge Regional Director, Suban, has been doing an amazing job in this collaboration with the Sky Foundation and their partnering organizations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Univerge very briefly, the international organization that I run, and share my screen as well. Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, I am the executive director of Univerge. Our website and our social media handles for Twitter and Instagram are on the slide as presented. And I want to talk a little bit about our mission. So Univerge is a global youth-run network advancing STEM education in communities of underserved and underrepresented students to increase diversity for the next generation of change makers, innovating and developing science for social good. So what we seek to do is we seek to combine science, technology, engineering, and math with the social sciences such as human rights and business, and then the humanities. So literature, arts, and philosophy, to teach and empower young students that science and technology can do amazing things in the fields of creativity and social impact as well. So how we do this is through 3 main models. First is education. We directly bring in-person programming before coronavirus hit, obviously, to students from underrepresented backgrounds, and these would be through engineering, astronomy-based workshops, mathematical-based workshops, and more. We also have recently and over the past year started our online programming, and this is holding workshops, seminars, and free resources for students around the world to get involved in STEM, along with our mentorship program, which is launching to facilitate mentorships centered around STEM for social good. Currently, we've worked with over 3,000 minority youths across 30 locations in 12 countries, spanning over 200 events, workshops, and camps that are all run by our young people on our team worldwide. So I was really honored to be able to share Univerge's mission, and now I would like to introduce today's topic along with our esteemed speaker who will be giving an amazing presentation. So the Earth continues to orbit around the sun, presenting before us the beautiful revelations of creations in the form of our very own night sky. As the Earth moves on this roundabout journey, the first detection of radio waves from an astronomical object was in 1932, where Carl Jansky at the Bell Telephone Laboratories observed radiation coming from the Milky Way. Subsequent observations have also identified a number of sources of radio emission. These include stars and galaxies, as well as entirely new classes of objects such as radio galaxies, quasars, pulsars, and masers. The discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation was actually regarded as evidence for the Big Bang Theory, and that was also made through radio astronomy. Radio astronomers collect and analyze radio waves emitted by celestial bodies, which is why we have the privilege of listening to Dr. Reddy, whose field of specialization is radio astronomy, particularly meteor astronomy. He studies the meteoroid stream structures and their interaction with the Earth's atmosphere. His radio observations of meteors were carried out regularly to study the ionospheric irregularities, along with the dynamics of the mesosphere and the lower thermosphere. These radar observations, by using the National MST radar facility, were conducted regularly to study various showers and non-showers to understand meteor influx to the Earth atmosphere. Dr. Reddy has presented many talks at international and national conferences, workshops, and seminars, and he actively participates in the outreach activities at various schools, colleges, and the common public as well. He is a life member of the Astronomical Society of India and the Indian Science Congress Association. And finally, he has been working on the UGC BSR Research Startup Grant project titled Meteor Observation with the Gadampi MST radar and determination of important meteor and atmospheric parameters. So welcome, Dr. Reddy. We are so happy to have you here and to hear your talk today on our final episode of the Astronomy Delight series.
So thank you, Archika. And before Reddy sir takes the charge, I would just like to rule a couple of instructions as a customary to all the audience who are here. मैं अपने सम्मानित अतिथियों के लिए जो कि यहाँ पर आज मौजूद हैं, हमेशा की तरह मैं दो बातें कहना चाहूँगा इससे पहले कि हमारे आज के अतिथि वक्ता सम्मानित प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर चन्ना रेड्डी सर चार्ज लें स्टेज का। प्रथम बात यह है कि हमारे चन्ना रेड्डी सर के नाम से दो स्क्रीन्स आपको नजर आएंगी। You will be seeing two screens in the name of Chenna Reddy sir, and for seeing the presentation of Dr. Chenna Reddy, you have to have pinned the screen of Dr. Chenna Reddy. आपको डॉक्टर रेड्डी की स्क्रीन को पिन अप करना पड़ेगा ताकि आप उनके प्रेजेंटेशन का निर्बाध रूप से आनंद ले सकें। दूसरी और बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि यदि आपके मन में कोई क्वेरी है, कोई शंका है, तो कृपया अपनी उस क्वेरी को आप चैट बॉक्स में टाइप करें। एंड इन दैट रिगार्ड, आफ्टर द टॉक ऑफ द एस्टीम्ड स्पीकर ऑफ द डे, द queries will be taken up by the host who will be taking the charge of the interactive session after the speaker has spoken up. So with these words, with a digital round of applause, I welcome Chenna Reddy sir, who has been a teacher to me also on this digital platform. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amritanshu and Archika, for nice introduction. Yes, it's quite long time. It's more than 5 years to see some of the fellow participants of our telescope making workshop, particularly Bharat Hadur sir, Sukumaran, Vijay Raghavan, and many others. I'm very happy to see the people, of course, at least in the digital form. Fine. Coming back to the topic of my topic today, fundamentals of radio astronomy. Fine. This is my topic today, fundamentals of radio astronomy. Though earlier the title given is radio astronomy, the other window of electromagnetic spectra. But for better introduction, I little change the title. Fine. Coming to the topic. Yes, as an human curiosity, we were very much aware about our surroundings, and we are very much aware about the light which we are receiving from the sun to our day-to-day activities. and at the same time we are able to see the rising and setting of other celestial objects like the planets, moon, and other stars. So with this, the curiosity human being has developed the scientific temper towards how they are rising and setting, and what is the theory behind them. So to explain such an these are the observational phenomena. To explain such an observational phenomena, the different theories have been put forward, and of course, I hope you had been given some sort of introduction to the earlier geocentric theory, heliocentric theory, and all those things. So with that, the hoping of background introduction, I hope you know well. And just moving to the other part. And at the same time, all these phenomena are observed with the light coming from the celestial objects, uh, be the moon or planets or any other stars. So the light is coming from them, and we are able to see such an objects, and that is the light. Light, what I mean is visible light. So until we are with the other way we call it as an optical window or optical astronomy. So we were developed different theories and observational for the observations. Telescope have been discovered by in 1610 Galileo, where astronomy took it's an accelerated mode with a much observation. So earlier to Galileo, there was only a theoretical people used to different theories put forward. Then the Galileo discovery of a telescope given a observational evidence what was said in a theory. Fine. All these were at the same time we have developed different theories of light like Huygens theory and all those things, Newton's theory, Huygens theory, where phenomena of light has been explained. So phenomena of light, the initial idea is at the time of Aristotle, the sources are emitting the light. That's why we could able to see the objects. But later on, it was ruled out that sun or any other object is giving the light, and they are reflecting back. That reflected light reaching the human eye, so that we can able to see the objects. So the detection and everything is analysis is taking place in the human eye and brain, which work together, so we can able to see the objects, the terrestrial objects, may be the terrestrial or celestial objects. So that's one area of astronomy which was developed or still developing. Fine. Coming back to the electromagnetic spectra, we are very much aware about the electromagnetic spectra and different wavelengths of electromagnetic spectra. But up to 80s, 1800, until the William Herschel for the first time detected the infrared wavelength, we are only confined to the very narrow region of electromagnetic spectra. That is only this visible wavelength region, which ranges from some 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. That's violet to red wavelength region. Then the immediately after William Herschel detection of infrared, the human curiosity led them to the detection of ultraviolet, and then X-ray and gamma ray. The one interesting point of X-ray is X-rays were known to human being much earlier, but it is only the laboratory kind of an experimental detection, producing of an X-rays, where the Röntgen experiment and even the gamma rays. But later on, we detected the X-rays and the gamma rays coming from the celestial objects. And the other is radio, which is topic of today's discussion. In the development of different theories of light, the very recent, the earlier corpuscular theory says that light consists of corpuscles and the color is because of the size of the corpuscular, of course, which could not explain the all observational phenomena. Then we are moving for newer and newer theories. So the very recent in the sense 1860s proposed by a theory proposed by Maxwell, that is electromagnetic theory, where the light, what we call it in an optical window or in any other, is consist of both electric and a magnetic component, and one is perpendicular to the other, and they are traveling in the perpendicular direction of both. The propagating direction is perpendicular to the both electric and magnetic field as shown over here. So these are the different theories. This is Maxwell's is theoretical. James Maxwell's is a theoretical proposal of existence of radio waves. Then sometimes Heinrich detected, it's only the theory, then later Heinrich detected the radio waves. Yes, they exist, the radio waves, which was proposed by Maxwell. But he said that he declared that there is no much practical use of these radio waves. Sometimes in 1894, Indian scientist Jagdish Chandra Bose demonstrated for the first time the generation and reception of radio waves, particularly at 60 gigahertz frequency range. Of course, he did not patented the work. Later on, somewhere in 1895, Marconi also demonstrated the same kind of an experiment, generation and reception of radio waves, and went to the patent of the work. So we give the credit to Marconi for radio telegraphy. So that's the initial detection of radio waves. Yeah, this detection of radio waves is a theoretical phenomena of which was in a laboratory only. So the radio astronomy was not started with that because of various reasons. Fine. So these you know well, the electromagnetic spectra, different wavelengths of electromagnetic spectra, one end of gamma ray, X-ray, UV, visible, infrared, radio, which is our part of discussion. Fine. In the electromagnetic spectra, as we are aware that all the wavelength cannot be reached to the ground, only visible wavelength and the radio can be reached to the ground. Other wavelengths like, let me go to the other slide. Yeah, this slide will very much clearly explain this only optical wavelength region can reach the ground, and whereas the radio wavelength can reach. The other wavelengths like whether it may be UV, X-ray or gamma ray, the other side is infrared, that cannot reach the ground. So to do such an astronomy, that's an X-ray, gamma ray, UV or some portion of infrared, one has to go for a space base. Space base can be of any platform. It may be earlier it is in a simple ballooning, later on sending up rockets where detector can be placed in the nose cone of the rocket and flown into the space. And later on, of course, now we are at a satellite age. That's we send a satellite with an appropriate telescope and a detector and flown into the space, and such an wavelengths can be detected. So because of the Earth atmosphere, we could not able to detect either the higher end of frequency, that's the X-ray, gamma ray, or UV, and infrared. So we for a radio, yes, we are fortunate to detect such an wavelengths from the ground. Fine. This is explains the atmospheric transparency and opacity. Transparency is nothing but how much it can travel through, and opacity is opaquing, how much it is opaquing or not allowing the such a particular wavelength to reach the observer on the ground. Yeah, for an array, yeah, yes, this the second figure shows this X-ray, UV, X-ray, and gamma ray. They are completely get opaque by the Earth atmosphere. But for an optical window, it is completely allowing, and some portion of infrared and wide portion of, yes, it's not completely all the radio wavelengths can be detected, but some portion, but which is almost 100 times as wider as optical can be detected. As we go to the, again in the radio also, as we go to the higher the wavelength, they are again opaque by the, they are not allowed, they are get transmitted back, reflected back by the Earth atmosphere. And coming to the shorter the wavelengths, again the atmospheric species, atmospheric molecules like carbon dioxide, water vapor, nitrogen, all these such atmospheric molecules, atmospheric species will observe the shorter wavelength of radio, but nonetheless we can able to detect the radio waves in the wavelength range of some 30 meters to 0.3 millimeter. The millimeter wavelength comes somewhere here, and the meter wavelength of 30 meter comes here. And as you go for the beyond 30 meter or so, then it cannot be detected from the ground, and even the lower the wavelengths cannot be detected. But this whatever we have, 0.3 millimeters to 30 meters is relatively very good range of electromagnetic spectra or the radio window that is available for the ground-based observations. And again, for some purposes, again, which is in a very broad 0.3 millimeters to 30 millimeters is in a very broad, or even sometimes it can be extended to kilometers too. So then it can be divided into the wavelength ranges, can be divided into very low frequency, medium frequency, high frequency, based on the frequency range, very high frequency, ultra high, super high, and extremely high frequency. And this high frequency range, that super high, extremely high, again they come under the category of microwave background. Those wavelength wave bands are mostly used for a communication purpose, and this region will be used for radio astronomy. Fine. The other point to be mentioned over here is different mechanisms, how they are generated, the different mechanisms, and how the source is generating the light and reaching the observer. There are different mechanisms. We know well about black body radiation, where it is will get a continuous spectra, and the other mechanisms like synchrotron, gyrosynchrotron, cyclotron radiation, Brewster-Lung radiation, all those things. Of course, the radiation mechanisms will not be discussed over here, where a radio region can detect. This is a black body we consider as an thermal, and the other there are thermal and non-thermal. That's sources and source mechanisms will not be discussed over here, but just to make a point, there are different mechanisms that can generate the radio waves. Fine. What is the advantage? Why we have to go for radio astronomy? Yes, there are advantages. The one advantages that's very generalized advantages. This can be the observations can be done day and night, whereas in the case of optical, though we are fortunate to get an optical from the ground base, but we could not able to detect the optical. We cannot see the sky if it is cloudy, if it is rainy, or if it is in a night daylight. As in the daylight, the sun is giving enormous amount of light, so we could not able to see the other objects, though they are present. But that's not a big problem. That's not at all a problem for radio astronomy. So in one word, that it can be done both day and night. So the radio waves can penetrate through the clouds, or even in the rainy time, we can do the observations. Yeah, of course, the radio waves sometimes can be stopped by strong winds or thunderstorms or formation of so. That's a very minor effect. And the other is radio interferometry, which we coming to discuss. We will discuss in later, that we can extend the radio telescopes, and the better angular resolution can be achieved. And it's in a second window. It's in a second window for the to study the celestial objects from the ground. And the atmosphere is transparent to centimeter and meter wavelengths. So yeah, particularly the wavelengths less than greater than mm, mostly observed by molecular bands, and 15 mm or so observed by reflected back by the ionosphere. Fine. More technical way of detail why we have to go for radio astronomy is some physical processes have signatures only or majorly in radio wavelengths, like pulsars, jets, and lobes of AGNs, and cosmic wave microwave CMBR. The detection that can be mostly can be done in radio. For this, just take an example of the sun. The sun is emitting predominantly in optical wavelength region, predominantly because of a middle-aged star, as it is a middle-aged star, predominantly emitting in the optical wavelength region. But because of close proximity to the observer on the Earth, we can detect almost all the wavelengths from the sun, starting from the gamma ray to X-ray, UV, and infrared, and radio. That's only possible because of close proximity of the sun. So though it is predominantly emitting in the optical wavelength. And coming to the other critical spectral lines of the interstellar medium, like H1 regions and H2 regions of neutral hydrogen lines and molecular rotation lines, the lines only they can be detected only in the radio wavelengths. And other is a detailed map of the velocity and structure of the galaxies and their dark matter content, which is high redshift, can be detected only in the radio wavelength region. And subspectral, that's in a sub-millimeter angular resolution, that's in a VLBI, which we will come across later. That's on a very large baseline interferometry that can give a good angular resolution. And the other point is radio waves, of course, unaffected by dust obscuration, which is a big problem, particularly in optical and particularly in the infrared wavelength region. Whereas for the radio, that's not a big problem at all. And other important is probing of magnetic field in the astronomy that can be possible within a polarization phenomena that can be possible in the radio. That is a radio wavelength region. So that's because of these reasons, the radio astronomy is much popular. Fine. Yeah, I just in one of the previous slide I mentioned about the detection of radio waves theoretically proposed by Maxwell and Henry detected the radio waves, and Marconi has given the radio telegraphy. This is a detection, the theoretical proposal, detection, and some scientific terrestrial applications of radio waves we known, but our interest to the radio was started sometimes in 1932 by Karl Jansky. Karl Jansky was is a radio engineer, antenna engineer at Bell AT&T laboratory. The purpose is continuously they are getting some kind of an hissing noise in their radio communication. So a job has been assigned to Karl Jansky to detect why such a hissing noise is coming continuously in the communication antennas. So he has developed a kind of an antenna which is steerable phased array at an 20.5 megahertz, and he detected an interesting hissing of noise, hissing signal, which is repeatedly coming every day, but of course, which is not exactly with an rotation of that's 23 hours 56 minutes, but with an some lag, it is continuously such a signal coming is a noise, and it was not a terrestrial phenomena. Earlier, it was thought that there may be some terrestrial phenomena, but later on, with an observation, it was ruled out that it's not coming from any terrestrial. And he repeated the same day and night. Again, it is confirmed that it is not coming only day or night. It is continuously such an hissing noise coming, whether it is a day and night. And later on, it was identified that it is such an hissing noise, which is has some systematic repetition signal like this and this and this. Later on, found that such a signal coming from the center of the galaxy, our galaxy, that's in the Milky Way galaxy. So that's the first time detection of radio waves from some, not from the terrestrial, but some celestial objects. So that's the way we can extraterrestrial radio waves detection was done by the Karl Jansky. So, so that's the first laying seed for development of radio astronomy. With that, we call it as Karl Jansky as a father of radio astronomy, and of course this is his antenna now, just on a kind of a demonstration museum piece kind of right now, which is operated 20.5 megahertz, which is at just demonstration purpose right now. So that's the fast detection of radio waves, and of course the initial detection will be always the people will be very much doubt about such a detection. So then the Gote Robert he want to continue the observations of Karl Jansky, but the predominant astronomy at the time is an optical, and optical people have not accepted such an observation. So the rover he himself was curious, but the predominant optical astronomers were very much skeptical about the radio detection of Carl Jansky. So he himself constructed an antenna at his backyard sometimes in 1937, where it was shown over here, and he's doing a systematic observation of radio waves, what was detected by the Carl Jansky. So, and he developed a map of the sky that's in a Milky Way galaxy, and these are the some of the earlier contour maps of Rover, which was at a frequency of 160 megahertz frequency. And God Rover given the fast radio map of the sky at 160 megahertz. Though the Carl Jansky has just detected the radio waves, but he could not continue the experiment, particularly focusing in the interest of radio astronomy. But Rover, he was very much curious, and he was very much focused on the detection of radio waves. And for the first time, he mapped the sky in radio wavelength, and he identified some radio sources, particularly in the Sagittarius region, Cygnus and Cassiopeia, Puppis, and the radio waves coming from the sun. So yeah, these are some of the charts which are giving the kind of the signal in the Garter robot display. And he was he made a statement that the astronomers did not know anything about. The astronomers, what he means is optical astronomers did not know anything about radio or electronics, and radio engineers did not know anything about optical astronomy. So with that, I consulted myself and decided to build a dish, and with that he succeeded the detection of mapping of the sky and detection of some radio sources. So he made a statement that what we learn from the optical astronomy is not wrong, but it's pretty minor. That's because it has its own limitations, and we have a very narrow region of electromagnetic spectra. We can get very minor information, very small information from the radio. So Robert was lived up to 2002 in the honor of Robert Clark was released, what has been shown over here. Fine. Coming to the summary, yes, the initial detection was sometimes in 1932 by Carl Jansky and Gotthard Robert, detection of the mapping of the sky and the detection of the some radio sources and the galactic radio sources and radio radiation from the sun, and also detected the Jupiter, particularly among the planets. So Jupiter can give the radio emission. And during the time of World War II, there was a development of radar, of course, which is for other purpose, for the detection of any enemy activities other end. There was a development of a radar, and afterwards this was very much useful for particularly for the radio astronomy or radar astronomy or radio engineering. And of course, radio astronomy was developed in almost all countries. Fine. Then the fast interferometry, of course, which we will discuss later on, was developed sometimes in 1948, and radio spectra of stars, radio spectra at a 21 centimeter line of hydrogen was detected in 1950s. And 1960s, Earth rotation aperture synthesis again, which is a further development of radio astronomy. to overcome the angular resolution problem was developed sometimes in 1960s, and construction of large imaging arrays was developed sometimes in 1970s, and by the time of 1980s, development of fast computer techniques for imaging process, and by 1990s, space-based astronomy was possible, and computing become cheaper. By the time of 2000, we are thinking of square kilometer array, which will we will come across later. Fine. The units, some of the units in radio astronomy are brightness of cosmic radio sources. Particularly in the radio, the signal itself is very weak, of the order of very few watts per meter square per hertz. Here, the one of the unit that we given for the radio is Jansky. Jansky is nothing but 10 power minus 26 watts per meter square per hertz. That means at any given square area of 1 meter square area, at any given wavelength, how much watts of the power. So this is 10 power minus 26 is very a small power or small energy. Brightest radio source that we can detect is only of 10 power 3 Jansky, and whereas the faintest observed is 10 power minus 26 Jansky. Just for a comparison with an optical brightness, zero magnitude star Vega, which is of about 4000 Jansky in a V band, and faintest observed optical source is of 10 power minus 10 times of star Vega. Fine. How the radio telescope work? Yeah, I hope you are aware about the optical telescope, where we have to go for a detection of the fainter and fainter objects. So one has to go for the larger and larger mirror or an mirror, particularly for reflecting telescopes. So the bigger is the better, the other way. Similarly, for simplicity, I just took a dish kind of an antenna. So we have a radio dish, and we have a feeder support here. So celestial radio, distant celestial radio source emitting the radiation, and that can reach the radio telescope, and that will be reflected back to the feeder network. So it will form a lobe pattern, and this lobe pattern at a feeder network, it will convert to the radio signal, this electromagnetic radiation coming from the source, this radio signal into the electrical signal, and it will be sent through the cable, and this electrical signal itself is very weak, so it has to be, which is of low frequency part, so which has to be amplified initially. Then we have a local oscillator over here, and for a comparison of how the signal coming and what is the frequency of the signal, and for all those things we have a local oscillator. So comparing with the local oscillator of known frequency, so the wavelength of the signal coming from the radio source can be known. Then we can record the signal. For this, in optical and other wavelengths, we used to use a detector, nothing but a human eye or a photographic plate or an CCD or a photography, which can record the signal. Similarly, in the radio, we have a receiver. So antenna is only a kind of a mechanical part which can collect the signal coming from the radio signal coming from the radio source, but actual detection can be done in the receiver system. And of course, this receiver has to have appropriate, has to be set to the appropriate frequency. So the receiver will receive the signal, and it will analyze the signal, and output can be generated in the form of the contours on the XY plot. It's in a two-dimensional. So this is in a simple, a kind of a dish. For a simplicity, I'll took only the reflector kind of a dish, what we use normally for our TV communication, radio communication. Yeah, we have a mesh kind of a dish, and we have a feeder network, and here the radio signal is converted into the amplitude, and amplitude will be transmitted through this cable system, where we have a reflector, and we have a feed horn, noise amplifier, and filters, down converter, IF amplifier, and all those things. These are the typical centimeter wave feed horn, which was fixed at the center of the telescope. Fine. There are different types of, as an optical, these are different types of radio telescopes based on their steerability. Steerability is nothing but in what the different directions a radio telescope can be moved. Based on the steerability, we simply classify them as fully steerable, partially steerable, and non-steerable. Steerability is just moving, whether the antenna can be moved both in altitude and azimuth direction, or it can be movable only one direction, other direction is fixed, or all the directions were fixed. So that's the based on steerability. The other way of the classification is the mountings. Yeah, these are the some of the mounting systems or focusing systems of radio antenna. Just like as an optical, we have prime focus, where we have in a big dish, and these radio waves will be reflected back to the feed horn here, and the other is in a Cassegrain focus. Again, we have in a big dish, and we have in a secondary reflector here, and again we have feed horn, where this will be the radio signal will be converted into some sort of an amplitude, and of course off Cassegrain, where the signal will be the focus to the off axis of the prime focus, and just like as an azimuth, we have which can be sent to the other side as a beam guider. We can even have n number of secondaries. This the final radio wave can be sent to the one side, or if required to the nearby room, and this is dual offset. That means it can be sent to the one side. Fine. Yeah, this is the kind of multiple reflector systems of radio waves, and these are the some of the actual reflector radio telescopes. Some are off-centric, particularly GMRT is on a prime focus, and this is on a Cassegrain focus. Some are off-centric and some are on-centric. That's on a prime focus, and Cassegrain are on the axis, and other are off-centric. Fine. Yes, we have to go for the larger and larger, particularly in the radio, to get a good angular resolution. Angular resolution theta is nothing but lambda by d, where lambda is the wavelength and d is the diameter of an antenna. So as you go for the higher and higher the wavelength region of radio, one has to have the larger and larger. To get a good angular resolution, one has to go for the larger and larger diameter of a dish. So then only one can get a good angular resolution. In that case, this is one of the famous radio telescope. That's an Arecibo telescope, which is a 300-meter dish, which is a fixed one. As you see the earlier case, that's a telescope like GMRT. It can be movable in all the direction. That's it can be moved to altitude and azimuth direction. But whereas in this case, which is diameter is almost 300 meters. So moving of such an 300 meters of diameter itself is a big problem. So which this is a fixed dish by utilizing the depth in the valley at an Arecibo. A kind of a telescope dish has been developed, which works at radio, particularly at 6 centimeter wavelength. As it cannot be moved, only a transit object. Transit in the sense, if any radio source transit on the this particular dish, that can be detected, and there is some facility that this feeder network, which is constructed by using the cable network, can be moved a little. So that's one possibility of observation with radio dish of Arecibo telescope. So this is non-steerable. Non-steerable, and it's a fixed one. The other way. So to get a good angular resolution at 21 centimeter, so which is of diameter is 300 meters. So at 21 centimeter, you will get an angular resolution of 2.4 arc minutes, and as you go for 0.3 centimeters, yes, again it's improvement in the angular resolution. And other radio telescope, Great Britain GBT telescope, which is of 100 meters dish, which can give angular resolution of 7.2 minutes at 21 centimeter, whereas at an 0.3 centimeter, it can give 6.2 arc seconds. So bigger can give the better angular resolution. Fine. That's one thing of radio telescopes where we can increase the angular resolution. But to further improve the angular resolution, and as you go to the higher and higher wavelength of radio region, to study the higher and higher wavelength resolution. So this diameter, whatever we have with an 30 meter or 300 meters of diameter, they cannot give good angular resolution. To get a good angular resolution, one has to go for the, as you go for the higher and higher wavelength region, one has to go for the larger and larger aperture of a telescope. But in physically developing of such a larger and larger aperture, we have a practical problem. That's moving of a 30 meter itself is a big problem because of a wind and other phenomena. Moving of itself is a very challenging issue. So to avoid that, instead of going for a single dish of a larger diameter, we go for an individual antennas collectively put together. They can give a larger diameter. That's known as interferometry technique. In the interferometric technique, yes, for a simplicity, we consider only two antennas, just two antennas, antenna X and antenna Y, and we have some radio source. So radio signal coming from the radio source initially to the antenna X, and with some time delay again to the antenna B, antenna Y. So because of the distance, the antenna X and Y are some apart. So definitely there is some time delay of receiving the signal at antenna X and antenna Y. So these antennas are operated separately. So we have a receiver and amplifier, and which was recorded on some tape recorder, along with timing information. Similarly, at an antenna Y, we have a receiver, then it will be recorded on the tapes, and timing information will be recorded. And at a later stage, they are moved to the central processing unit, where they are signal coming from the antenna X and signal coming from the antenna Y can be superimposed, and they are processed with reference of time delay, how much time delay between the signal received at antenna X and antenna Y. and they are superimposed. With such a superimposition, we will get good angular resolution. That these two antennas, though they are practically, physically, they are operated separately, but for the signal, they put together can give the larger angular resolution. These two antennas are acting together. So this distance between the antenna X and the Y is known as baseline. And as you increase the baseline, which is known as very large baseline. So this very large baseline interferometry can be very much useful for to give the higher angular resolution as you go for higher and higher wavelength. As you compare to the optical or other wavelengths, the wavelength itself is shorter, so smaller size of antenna itself is sufficient enough. But whereas for the to give the good angular resolution, smaller diameter of antenna is sufficient enough. But whereas to the radio, as you are moving to the higher and higher end of the radio wavelength, so we need to have the larger and larger diameter. So that larger diameter can be possible only with independent antennas, which are actually acting independently, but for detection of a radio source, they are acting as a single antenna of such a large diameter. Yeah, in practical sense, it can be extended to the any large. One antenna can be put placed in one end of the country and other at the other end, or it can be extended to the one antenna in the one country and one continent, and one another antenna in another continent. So we can get such a large baseline, and it can also be extended to the space, that you can put one antenna on the earth, and even you can put some antenna by using some space mission satellite. So the distance between the antenna on the ground to the antenna on the space can give the baseline. So such a large baseline can be achieved. So altogether it can give it can give good angular resolution. So one of the example for this space-based VLBI is Radio Astron project, which can give the good good amount of details of galaxy. Fine. This VLBI is also given detection of very interesting objects, superluminous motion of the objects. Fine. So there are some of the important major interferometer telescopes known as electronic VLA, very large array, very large baseline array of USA, ALM Atacama large aperture telescope, Westbrook telescope, and GMRT low frequency telescope. Fine. Coming to the India, India also we have radio telescopes. So next I will focus on radio telescopes in India. We have one in Ooty radio telescopes, which is of 530 by 30 meter equatorial mounting parabolic cylinder on hill, which can detect lunar occultations, interplanetary scintillations, recombination lines, and pulsar timings. It also has a radio telescope, Ooty synthesis radio telescope, for detection of the sun, and other is GMRT. GMRT is as we discussed earlier, it's in a prime focus kind of, where it can be moved. It's in a fully steerable in sense. We having the prime focus, it can be moved both in altitude and azimuth direction. which has wide wavelength band detection. Several wave bands can be detected from 150 megahertz to 1500 megahertz. The project was started sometimes 1995. By the time of 2000, it was open to the international astronomers. Large telescope at meter waves, and the other is Gaurabinda Noor GBRT, Gaurabinda Noor Radio Telescope, which is 1.4 kilometer by 5 kilometer kind of T array dipoles operating at 34.5 megahertz, which was started sometimes in 1976. It is used for sky survey, pulsar detection, recombination lines detection, and this site is also known for radio heliographic. That's an dynamics of the study. That's a dynamic study of the sun can be done, particularly radio burst at different frequencies. The next feature, of course, the India is a part of this program, which is known as the Square Kilometer Array. It's a global partnership project which is proposed to build in South Africa and Australia, which is expected to complete by this year. That's in 2020. Fine. These are some of the images which detected with normal as well as radio telescopes having a high angular resolution. This for comparison, radio image on the right made with an 37 meter single dish, whereas this is 37 meter single dish, and this is other one with 27 element very large VLA telescope. So a very detailed further details can be studied. That means resolution is improved as you go for the larger and larger array. Yeah, this is the just for a comparison of pictures taken with the optical and the other wavelengths. This is the galaxy, Milky Way galaxy in visual, and this is the same Milky Way in the infrared, and this is 408 megahertz radio sky, radio Milky Way of Milky Way galaxy. Fine. Milky Way galaxy at different wavebands. All these are 400 megahertz H1 regions, 2.7 gigahertz H2 regions. All these are in radio wavelength regions, and this is IRS, infrared astronomical satellite. The Milky Way galaxy in taken with IRS satellite, and which is again in Milky Way in mid-infrared, Milky Way in near-infrared, and visible image of Milky Way, and X-ray and gamma ray image of Milky Way. So as you just for a comparison, different wavelengths can give the much details in one wavelength. The source may be prominent in one wavelength, and the same may not be prominent in other wavelengths. Some information can be detected in gamma ray, some information can be detected in optical. The same kind of information may or may not be detected in the radio. So in one word, what I would like to say is to have a complete idea of any celestial object, one has to study the celestial objects in almost all the wavelengths, because the same source may be giving enormous amount of information in one wavelength, and sometimes it may or may not give in the other wavelength. So this is the image of Orion Nebula at 1.4 gigahertz radio image. Of course, in the radio, we will get only the kind of contours, and the coloring and all those things are the false colors, which was later superimposing the images and the filling of the false colors to get an idea. And again, supernova Cassiopeia A, and at different wave bands. That's an 1.4 gigahertz L band, 5 gigahertz C band, 8.4 gigahertz, and image was superimposed, taken from the different wave bands. Fine. Again, the image of the Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter is only the planet that can give the radio emission, and which gives the magnetic fields, other way magnetosphere of the Jupiter. The other important is radio detection of the radio galaxies that possible with the radio astronomy. So again, it's the false colors, filling of the false colors. We'll get this is the center of the galaxy, and we have the jets, which are elliptical galaxy. We are both the sides of elliptical galaxy. We have a strong emissions at a radio frequency. That's the phenomena is synchrotron radiation, particularly the nearest Centaurus nearest galaxy. We have jet kind of a structure that can be detectable in radio wavelength. So radio emission, we have, as I said earlier, we have a core of radio. For a radio galaxy, we have a core, and on the both the sides of the radio galaxy, we have a jet, a stream coming out of the core, and at the edge we have a hot loop, a loop pattern on the both the sides, where we have hot spots on the both sides. Of course, sometimes we may get jets on the both sides, and sometimes we may not get the jets on the both sides. There are two categories of radio galaxies, radio galaxy of type 1, type 2, where some may have jets on the both sides, some may have jets on the single side. So detection of such an phenomena, one has to have good angular resolution of the order of milli arc seconds of angular resolution is required. So in the radio image of the sun, where you have associated phenomena like sunspot, coronal mass ejection are detected, where the phenomena radiation mechanisms is gyro resonance or synchrotron radiation, plasma emission and even thermal emission can be detected in radio. Radio, yes, radio burst can be studied. The burst can be categorized depending upon their nature and duration and their frequency of different types. Type 1, type 2, type 3, 4, and 5, and even sometimes a very recent one is U-type burst. So some of the bursts are very short duration of the order of few seconds, and some are of few minutes and a few hours, or some are of few days also, and some are associated with flares, some are associated with prominences. All these burst detection can be possible only in the radio, and the other wavelengths we can only see the sun, but the burst phenomena cannot be detected. Fine. And the other important is detection of cosmic microwave background. Theoretical background radiation. Theoretically, we have an idea that universe started within some small sudden explosion, which we know it as a Big Bang. There is no experimental evidence for Big Bang. It's only a hypothesis, a theory which was put forward how the universe was formed. So for the formation of universe, we very much, of course, there is another theory which is known as a steady state theory, which said that the universe was exist and which will be exist forever. There may be some kind of an oscillations, but Big Bang theory says that which was started at a point, and suddenly some all the matter and everything was very in a compact, suddenly some explosion will took place, and all the objects are moving away, receding away and away. So that's a wide accepted theory for formation of the universe. But so far, up to the detection of radio waves at a Big Bang, by the cosmic wave microwave background radiation, there is no evidence for Big Bang. So for the first time, this CMBR detection at 2.7 Kelvin, which is as the matter evolves, which is getting cooler and cooler, which was started sometimes earlier. By the time it get cooler, so the radiation can be detected only at 3 Kelvin temperature. So for the first time, this was detected at 2.7 Kelvin. That's Penzias and Wilson experiment. That's known as cosmic microwave background radiation. Peaks at 200 gigahertz, and the experiment was done by the Penzias and Wilson in 1964. For that, they got a Nobel Prize, and of course, which is COBE satellite in 1989, which is mapped the sky, which is detected the radiation at 2.7 degree Kelvin. So this is other application of radio wavelength. This is some which gives an observational evidence for the Big Bang theory. Fine. Radio astronomy today astronomy at the cutting edge, which is giving astrophysical, which is useful for astrophysical research. Roughly 70% of what we know today about the universe and its dynamics is due to radio astronomy observations rather than the optical observations. Optical observations has its own limitations. Though we can look and feel the observations, but it has its own observational limitations. So more than roughly 70% of what we know is because of radio, and big projects are some are going on, some are undergoing, like very large array in Mexico, Arecibo telescope, and GBT Green Bank, and Westbrook telescopes, and Jodel Bank, ALMA, and Square Kilometer Array. These are some of the telescopes which some are already existing, some are in planning stage. So yeah, with this the kind of some initial details of radio astronomy, fundamentals of radio astronomy. I'll stop here. Yeah, I'm stopping here.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Channa sir, for giving us such a beautiful insight on this entire wide spectrum of radio astronomy. And I thank the audience for being with us and for asking a few beautiful bunch of questions, not only over the chat box, but also over the other forums on which we are live by now. So, sir, if you are comfortable after your lecture, so can we have a small interactive session with you?
Yeah, we can go for.
Thank you, sir. So now I would like to bring into play my co-host Shubhan Raj also. And Shubhan, I would request you, if you are on the line, to take a few questions from the chat box. And until then, until you are browsing the chat box questions, I would just like to take a few questions that are present in our social media platform. So, Chenna sir, the one of the important questions that has been asked, one is asked from Carl from Florida. Carl is asking, what does the sun look like below 100 megahertz? And why is 3 gigahertz the best frequency at which to measure the sun's microwave output?
Yeah, Amritanshu, can you just repeat the question?
Actually, the question is, what does the sun look like below 100 megahertz? And he is asking, why is 3 gigahertz the best frequency to measure the sun's output, microwave output?
Fine. Sun is the nearest source for us, and sun giving predominant radiation in optical wavelength, but because of its close proximity to us, it can give the radiation in almost all the wavelength, uh, starting from gamma, X-ray, UV, and the other optical and radio. To study the sun, which is middle-aged object, which can give the predominant emission in the optical wavelength, and very nearer to the optical is infrared, then microwave. As you go for the higher and higher wavelength region, it is not emitting any of its radiation. So that's why to study the sun, microwave is more appropriate than going for the higher wavelength. So that's why we are having the telescopes of microwave. So to study the sun, as you go for the higher and higher wavelengths or the lower frequency, it may not give any radiation from the sun. You may not get any radiation from the sun. That's why microwave is the appropriate wavelength region to study the sun, because predominant emission is optical. And near optical is we have infrared, and near to the infrared is microwave. So as you want to study particularly in the radio, microwave is the best region to study the sun.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jana sir. And I hope, Karl, that your doubt is being satisfied. And now moving from the American continent towards India.
Yes.
So I am asking the chat box question now.
Yeah.
Jana sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sir, the first question is from Sandeep Mokwana, and he have asked, how can we distinguish two same wavelengths of, how can we distinguish the radio waves of same wavelength coming from two different sources?
Fine. The source may not be at the same position. So the one source may be at one position and the one source may be at other position. So continuous monitoring of the sources, you can differentiate where the source is. So maybe the sources giving the same frequency, but their position will be there at a different location. So continuous monitoring of the sources, you can differentiate from where such a source is. Though the wavelength may be the same, but they are at a different positions. So you can easily differentiate the wavelength coming from one to the other.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the second question is again from him, and he have asked, can secondary reflections causes signal loss?
Secondary reflections
Causes signal loss.
Secondary reflections at a telescope end. Yeah, if it is at a secondary telescope end, we need to have good reflection on the telescope. If it is the bad reflector, as in the case of optical telescope, we need to have good reflection. Then only the whatever light fall on the optical telescope can be easily channeled or focused to the mirror, secondary mirror, or to the detector. Similarly, even in the case of a radio telescope also, there should not be any loss of the radio waves reaching the antenna, radio dish, and we should have to have a good kind of a reflection coating material, so that all the radio waves can be easily channeled out to the feeder network, where from the feeder network it can be amplified. So if it is of not of good reflecting material, yes, definitely there will be loss of signal, which may give the secondary, which may causes the secondary sources. There will be the loss of signal if radio telescope is of not good reflecting kind.
And for this, okay, thanks for this answer, sir. The second last question is from Malay Parmar, and he have asked why we need different types of reflector.
Reflectors on the telescope. I hope the question is why we need different types of reflectors on the telescope. If it is so,
Yes.
yes, we need to have good reflection of radio waves as it reaches the telescope. Then only all the signal coming from the celestial source can be easily channeled to the feeder network. Then it can be amplified. Otherwise, there will be, though we have a big antenna, but there will be signal loss, radio signal loss. That's why we need to have good reflection coating material on the surface of the radio dish. I hope I am.
Thanks, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, sir, for
Thank you,
this
sir.
answer.
Thanks a lot for answering the question. And actually, sir, I lost you in the connection, so I apologize to you. Okay, sir. Actually, there was a question from Susan. She was asking, with reference to, you had given one reference, that is, why a few spacecraft has detected Whistler-like activities in the vicinity of Jupiter
Yes.
in your slides. So she was asking, sir, is there any, you can say, an approximate limit to which we can detect the lightning in radio astronomy?
No, question is not clear. Lightning means she's asking about the question is about the atmospheric phenomena, or what it is. I'm not getting the question. Sorry.
Okay, as far as what is that is, she is referring to that radiation, I suppose. That is the radiation, because she has given the example of Whistler-like activity.
No, the only planet that can give the radio emission is Jupiter, where we can study the magnetic field. Not only for the Jupiter, for other objects also. The radio is the best region. Radio wavelength is the best to study the magnetic field. We have studied about the polarization phenomena, where the light coming from the celestial objects are for other. For that sense, most of the sources, the light coming from the sources is unpolarized. In some case, if you put a polarizer, only one kind of a polarization can be detected. In the case of radio, so if the polarization can be studied, then the magnetic field and magnetic field strength can be understood. That can be possible in radio wavelength. Magnetic field and magnetic field strength can be understood in the radio.
So, Shubhan, now I would request you to kindly move towards the final question before we take the parting comments from the honorable speaker of the day. Over to you, Shubhan. Kindly ask the final question.
The final question is jointly from Pratap Singh Chundawat and Bharat Adur, sir. And the question is, how can we enter into the field of radio astronomy, and how can amateurs make their own radio telescopes from radio FM bands and small discs for molecular astronomy?
Yeah. To enter into the field of astronomy, or particularly in the radio astronomy, there are two streams. One stream is you graduate yourself, then doing the post graduation and entering into the research area to do the PhD. The other is at an engineering level. If you are in an engineering background, then masters in engineering, then developing of an antenna engineering is one branch. So most of the institutes like TFR, NCRA TFR, or other institutes where there are branches of radio astronomy, both theoretical and scientific level, as well as at an engineering level. So these are the two streams where the young people can enter into the field, both through the engineering stream or through the science stream. So these institutions have their own entry levels. Maybe some institutions are taking the candidates through their institutional examinations, or some are taking the candidates through the national examinations like GATE, JEST, or NET, or whatever the other national examinations. So through these two streams, so that the candidate can get enter into the field of astronomy, particularly into the radio astronomy, both at science level as well as engineering level. Coming to the other question, how to build a small telescope, small radio telescopes. There are some the groups, of course. Our university not taking much part, but there are some groups, particularly Anand Hota. I hope Anand HOT Anand Hota. He has some project on developing a small telescope, RAD at home. And as well as this NCRA school, NCRA is also conducting developing of a small sort of a telescope for detection of some of the radio signal coming from the celestial sources, particularly this hydrogen lines H2 regions. So their material can be very much helpful.
So thank you. Thanks a lot, Chenna sir. And I am very happy to inform that Ananda sir is today amidst our audience also. And for more details, our audience can directly log on to the Facebook RAD at home, which
Yes.
our esteemed speaker has just elucidated out. And so you can get more details about that sort of a project. And it's really, really an interesting project. And it has been a pleasure that I also had served in the beginning as an amateur student, so I was not able to continue too long. But I have had the opportunity of interacting with such sort of projects. And so I just assure the entire audience, the spectrum of audience which is present today, that we had not been able to take all the questions from all the forum. But yes, we shall forward your queries and questions to the speaker of the day. That shall be taken up in due course of time, and you shall receive all the answers by mail. And before we move towards the further closure of the session and a vision on astronomy, we would just like to take a few parting comments from the esteemed speaker of the day, Dr. Chenna Reddy, for the citizen science and the amateurs and the professionals who are all present here today. Over to you, sir. The parting comments.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are able to hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah, I will be happy to give maybe in the future if any of the talk. Maybe with an prior information, maybe of 10 or 15 days, depending upon my scheduling. So I am happy to give even in future also. Yeah, any of the talk even in the future also.
So thanks a lot, sir. And now I would just request Dr. Bharat Adur, sir, to kindly unmute yourself and send us his vision of astronomy before we come to this closure of this third part of Astronomy Delight series, with a, you can say, a promise to come back in the coming days. Over to Bharat, sir. If you are here, kindly unmute yourself. Bharat, sir, are you able to hear me? I suppose we are not able to connect to him. Maybe there is some sort of a problem. So now I would request Swapnil to kindly grace the dais and give us a vote of thanks with your experiences for the past 4 months. Over to Swapnil.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Amritanshu, and I would like to congratulate all of you for being a successful completion of this Astronomy Delight series. So it's been a long time, like being associated with you all in this a long series. But everything has a beautiful ending, so this series also has. So I want to share some experience. It all starts with the experiment with the start of this lockdown phase. And we have also certain obligations as we were not able to reach our public audience as we all of us know that we are known to like work in a field, but right now as lockdown goes on, we need to find some type of platform where we can associate with our audience, where we can transmit our knowledge to the people who are keen to learn about astronomy, about the other things. So like we are very fortunate to experience something incredible. So you can say like perhaps every beautiful scene in nature and amazing concert or natural human response is to share it with others. So we also want to share some beautiful experience with you all. I always believe in to chase your passion wholeheartedly. Maybe it will work out, maybe it won't. And if you have a beautiful team backing you up, we have a team of Mr. Amritanshu, Shubhan, and all the other team members like Shweta Srivastav, Sumit Kumar Srivastav, and many others who like keep backing us by being behind the screen. Also, it all starts like. A small experiment. So I love like when no one recognizes my accomplishments. Said no one ever. Whatever it's personal or a teamwork victory, take a moment to celebrate with 100% of your enthusiasm. When I worked at a box, I would rung a huge gong with my co-workers and give each other high fives. Every single time, perhaps love to be appreciated. People love to be appreciated. So I want you all to be as you all know, we have been organizing a programs for the public welfare, like taking the astronomy to the grassroots level. Already we had a talk on some practical approaches in astronomy, and also we were like quite fortunate to witness the annular solar eclipse of this decade 2020, and we also make people our audience to see by like going live how the solar eclipse can anyone see. So we are there are some positive sides we are going to take from here, and I want a special thanks to all intellectual partners like Bagalkot Astronomy Club and Akash Ganga Center for Astronomy, and also our the umbrella of Innovage International and Sky Foundation. I would also like to congratulate thank you all the Wipnet Club associated with it, whether it Ignited Mind Wipnet Club, Skyak Wipnet Club, and the Women Led Wipnet Club, Women Led Science Wipnet Club. So over to you, Mr. Amritanshu. I have no words to express my happiness amongst all, and it was really a successful program. We like to going to organize such more programs for you all. And one more thing, with your permission, I would want to announce something with our audience. If you have, I have your permission.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Hello. Yeah. So I also it gives me immense pleasure to announce you that our Skyak Amateur Astronomers Club, in collaboration of Ignited Mind Wipnet Clubs, is now a part of International Asteroid Search Campaign, which will soon be notified. Announcement regarding the registration part and all the other formalities will soon be provided to you. So pull up your socks and get ready for the same. It's really a wonderful initiative and very, very first one of its kind in India. You all will be benefited, and who knows, some of the asteroid universe will be named by you. So best of luck, and it's a very new initiative from our group, and we will soon start working on that, and all the announcement regarding the same will be shared by you on our any of the social media platforms, whether it is a Facebook or an Instagram or on a YouTube. Please stay with us, and over to you, Mr. Amritanshu. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Swapnil, for your kind words. And with these words, I would just like to thank the esteemed speaker of the day, Dr. K. Channareddy, and all the esteemed audience who had stayed with us for the course of 4 months. And in this course of 4 months, where we had spent almost all the domains of astronomy, we tried to, but there were a few domains that were left, and we shall be soon resuming this astronomy delight. It's just not the end, but it's just a comma, or you can say not the full stop of the program. We shall soon be returning with a few more delegates on the same platform at the same time, perhaps this time with more lectures on space communication, Mars Orbiter mission, Parker probe, and all the Aditya mission, Gaganyaan, which are coming from the different dignitaries of the different institutions. With these words, I would just like to say, in the age of corona pandemic and in the age of upcoming Unlock 4.0 that is going to roll out from the month of September, we request you to kindly stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the night skies and enjoy the astronomical phenomena that are going to observe in your vicinity. With these words, I bid you farewell on behalf of all the collaborators. Thanks, Channareddy sir. Thanks a lot for all the audience who have joined, not only on this Google platform, but also on our social media and Facebook Live as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So with these words, I declare the formal closure of the session, and this is not the end. Every meeting is for parting, and parting is yet again for meeting. So we shall meet soon on this Google platform meet. Good day. Goodbye.